He is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million hours, having met with, even in 100,000 million hours, having may we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth, the unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata. Good evening and welcome again to Sesshin. We have 3 teachers for the Sesshin, as has been for the last 2 years. Dokai, Reiri, and myself. And I think you'll find some similarities and differences between the way we teach. One of the things that I think when I think back of the tradition where I studied in Japan for many years was that when my teacher spoke to the assembly, of course there was no internet. We were all in one room, the Zendo, but we were not expected to see him or look at him while he was speaking. And the reason he gave for that was that, especially when we come for Sesshin, we come to sit. And we will not awaken to the way simply by hearing somebody speak about it. That would happen, will happen, by being completely one with Sesshin, being completely one with Zazen, which is really how Sesshin is devised. To really strip away those things that are not absolutely necessary, so that we can concentrate on one thing at a time, whether we're sitting, doing kinhin, chanting, eating, and so on. So when I'm giving my talks, my suggestion to you people, and by the way, it is really touching to see your images on this computer in front of me when you're sitting. My suggestion is that you continue with your zazen while I'm speaking. And if it should happen that I say something that resonates with you, that will stay with you without any effort on your part. Some people watch the breath. Some people count the breath. Some people are wondering about whether a dog has Buddha nature. Some people are just sitting. So I encourage you to, while you're listening to me, to really keep your focus on your zazen. And while you're doing that, listen to what I'm saying. This session, we've decided to talk about a short work called Fukanzazengi, written by Dogen Zenji, the great Japanese master, who went to China and brought the Soto teaching, practice, realization back from China to Japan. There he began to teach about Buddhism and about Zen. And the very first thing he wrote was this work, Fukanzazengi. We know that he did tweak it slightly, but he is said to have been 28 years old when he first wrote Fukanzazengi. That in itself is rather remarkable. But by the time, within 5 years or so, he had tweaked it, as I understand it, into the form that we now read and chant and study. Just a little bit about Dogen Zenji. He was born in the year 1200, about 800 years ago. He was born into the aristocracy. However, his parents, his mother and father, died while he was young. And it is said that feeling the impermanence of things, he gravitated towards Buddhism. He had relatives who were eminent priests and went to study with them. And in the process of studying about the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, reading through the sutras and the commentaries, that a question came to him. And that question had to do with the teaching of the Buddha, which appeared in all of the sutras, which was that all sentient beings, all things, are endowed with Buddha nature. All things, unconditionally, all things are endowed with Buddha nature. But the question for him was, why was it that those people who had transmitted the Dharma from generation to generation, why had all of those people practiced so intensely? In other words, why is practice necessary? If everybody has the Buddha nature, why is it necessary to practice? And he went around asking various priests in the area of Kyoto, why is it necessary to practice? And nobody could give him a good answer. I've always found that rather remarkable. Buddhism had been the state religion in Japan for 600 years at that time, really a rather long time, and yet nobody could give him a good answer. And finally someone told him, listen, if you want to resolve that question for yourself, if you really want to find the answer to that question, you're going to have to go to China. Now, which he did at the age of 22 or so, a difficult trip at that time, and yet he was able to make that trip. He reached China, finally found the teacher who was able to help him resolve that question. Tendo Nyojo Zenji was delighted to find a disciple like Dogen Zenji, someone who had this deep question, this personal question. Call it a koan if you wish. Why is it necessary to practice? This question that really motivated him to practice, to be a monk, and finally to go to China. And after 3 years of intense practice, after he understood what he had to do, he realized the way. This is a story that I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with. He stayed for some time after that experience, and then around the age of 27, he returned to Japan, ready to speak and teach about the Dharma. We know that he went back to Kenninji, the temple where he had been practicing before he went to China, stayed there for some time, was very dissatisfied with the practice that was going in there at that time. And finally, he set off on his own to found the first pure Zen monastery in Japan, Koshoji, which is still in existence, in Uji, not far from Kyoto, south of Kyoto. And there he began to teach the various people who gathered around him. But even before he began to teach in the monastery, he had written this piece, Fukanzazengi. And the version that we're going to be reading is translated as universally recommended instructions for Zazen. Dogen Zenji had come back from China. He wanted to recommend Zazen, this practice that we're doing now, to everybody, young and old, men and women, regardless of which Buddhist sect they might belong to, and so on. A universal recommendation. This is for everybody. He was really enthusiastic about this. One of the truly, this is such a great sutra. There's so many wonderful things in this sutra. But one of the key, I've always thought this is the key. I'm going to the heart of the sutra right here. In this translation, it says, the Zazen I speak of, the Dogen speak of, is not meditation practice. It is simply the Dharma gate of joyful ease, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. The version that I'm used to, the Zazen I speak of, is not step-by-step learning meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of joyful ease, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. Very similar. But he was underlining this matter that Zazen is not a means to an end. As my teacher often said, Zazen is Zazen. It's not me who's doing Zazen. That would make two things. If there's two things, there's a separation. No. Dogen is saying Zazen, the thing itself, is the Dharma gate of joyful ease, and so on. Now, this is something that we can hear, we can believe it, but our task is to really verify that. I don't think it's enough simply to repeat these words. These words are important. They are like a finger pointing at the moon. But it's up to us to really fulfill them. I would say this is no easy thing to do. And yet, Dogen was obviously sure that anybody could do that, if they do it, if they really do it, if they are able to really be one with Zazen. And Sesshin, as I said earlier, is designed, devised to help us really narrow our attention to one thing at a time. Zazen and Sesshin is not simply sitting. Oh yeah, now it's free time. I'll do this or that. No, we're asked during Sesshin to really let go of those non-essential things. But with the understanding that we're living within Zazen, that all of the activities we do, to do them mindfully, as was mentioned in these instructions that I think everybody saw, that our focus is really on one thing at a time. I'd like to read one short thing by my teacher. He passed away not quite 2 months ago, and recently I was asked by another group to speak a little bit about his teaching, and I came across this teaching that he gave during Sesshin. There are just 2 or 3 paragraphs here, but they sort of dovetail with what I'm saying about this part of the Fukanzazengi, Zazengi. The Zazen is not meditation practice. It's not step-by-step learning practice. It is simply the Dharma gate of joyful ease. And this is a talk that he gave during Sesshin, extemporaneously, and it goes like this. And mind you, everybody's sitting. Sometimes there were as many as 60 people in the Zendo. Not bad. Today we have 25, 30, I don't know, 35. We have a lot of people here. This is great. You people, he began, have expressly come to sit. You haven't come to forget the self or to be one with things. You've come to sit. So don't raise delusions like, I've got to forget the self, or I've got to be one with things, or I've got to awaken to Satori. It's enough just to sit. Everything else is delusive discrimination. Then what is sitting? It is to forget sitting by sitting. How will it be forgotten? How will you be able to forget Zazen? By sitting. You will forget sitting. It isn't a matter of using your own thoughts to forget sitting. As I've often said, don't hold on to the objective of forgetting sitting. If you don't do it like that, then sitting will not be only sitting or just sitting. Sitting will become a way or a means to achieve an end. If that happens, then your Zazen will not be the true meaning of Zen, Buddhist sitting. So really chew this up. Think about that. And then really be simple. Be one with Zazen. Or you could say be empty. And then forget being one. Forget forgetting. That's it. So this is a short teaching from my teacher, Harada Sette Roshi. I offer it to you as inspiration. That we're not here to try and get something. We're not here to try and push things away. We are here truly just to sit. Certainly all kinds of things might arise. Sometimes you're sitting well, sometimes you're not. Sometimes it's comfortable, sometimes it's uncomfortable. You might be plagued by questions, etc. That's part of sitting. Just let it come and go. So I offer you this to you today, tonight, as we begin Sesshin. Just sit. As my teacher said, otherwise, Zazen becomes a means to an end. And we're told over and over again that Zazen is simply the Dharma gate of joyful ease. Thanks so much for listening. And best wishes for this Zoom session. are. I vow to free. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to win. Dharma gates are bound. I vow to the ways unsurpassable. I vow